Hey everybody, Randy with Lowbuck LS here again. Thanks for joining us on the live stream this evening. We've got another interview for you tonight. We've got Dale Schwartz on this evening, and he is the owner of the Pro Touring Store, which is a company that sells crate engines and suspension components and fuel systems and brake systems and a wide range of other parts. And we also want to point out that he doesn't just sell LS parts, even though that's what we'll be mainly talking about tonight. I've had a look around on his website, and I've seen Coyote engines and Hemi engines, and even the 7.3 Godzilla engine. So we don't want to put him in that box of being just an LS guy, because he carries a wide range of parts for a wide range of brands. And also wanted to mention, since we're on a live stream tonight, if you've got any questions for Dale, just drop them in the comments and we'll answer those as we go along. So thanks for joining us, Dale. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Randy. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Looking forward to chatting with you. So give us a little bit about your background. Like, tell us where you're from and how you got started in the car hobby.
Sure. Well, it all started from a young age, like, a lot of us get started. So my dad, Jeff Schwartz, was pretty well into the car scene from an early age. He raced cars, he raced bikes. So naturally, when I was growing up, I was in the middle of all that. He just did it as a hobby, raced all that stuff as a hobby, and was a machinist and all that stuff by trade. So as I was growing up, I was all around bikes. So I got into dirt bikes. I rode dirt bikes when I was a kid. And then, when it became time to get close to driving age, it made sense to get Dale a cool car.
Yeah, of course.
So I sold my dirt bike and actually bought this car, an 1982 Trans Am. And it was $1,200 back then, which nowadays these third gens that are clean are going for big dollars. It seems.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was a pretty good amount of money for a 14-year-old. So that's kind of where I got my personal main start. But I mean, I was in the garage with Dad wrenching on stuff, at age 10. I helped Cadillac motor and all that stuff. So we got started in the LS stuff pretty early on too. Just before we built this car, my dad had a mid-engine car, a kit car called the Ultima GTR.
Oh, wow.
There was very few of them in the U.S. at that time, but it was imported from the U.K. and he built it in our two-car garage at home.
Cool.
And that was in like 2002, 2003, and he stuck an LS in that thing. It was an LS6 with a custom sheet metal intake and stuff. So thinking back to those days, I mean, in 2003, the LS had only been out for 6 years. So that was pretty early on as far as anything's concerned. So, I kind of got my first taste in the LS scene, I guess, with that, and then, helped him build that. Eventually, he lost his job in more of a corporate structure and started up a shop called Schwartz Performance.
Right.
Muscle car builds, chassis, engines in the early days. Did a lot of crate engines, specifically LS. So I've been in it a while, man. I mean, I built the engine on this thing a few times. It's a 400 small block. And I built a number of LS motors when I was with my dad. Fast forward, a little bit. Actually, let me talk a little bit about my kind of the beginnings there of starting the shop. So he started in 2005. I was in the middle of high school. So eventually I had to go to college. Well, we toured a college called McPherson College in the middle of Kansas. And it was the only school that had a 4-year automotive restoration program.
Nice.
So I ended up signing up for that and was there for 4 years and got my degree in automotive restoration and business emphasis. So, yeah, I was with Dad for many years after that, probably close to 10 years full time. So got real deep in engines and pro touring builds and stuff. And then, just wanted to kind of change things up a bit. And my wife is from South Carolina. So we moved from Illinois, where I grew up, to South Carolina about 2 years ago. And then I worked for another shop for a short time, mostly doing later model stuff, but it's still LSs and LTs. And then fast forward a little bit more, started a pro touring store about a year ago, and been going at it since, man. It's been kind of a wild ride this last couple of years since I moved down to South Carolina, but I'm pretty well settled in, and things are going well. So so that's kind of, I guess, the history of.
Right on. So what made you make that decision to go from working for somebody else to starting your own, the pro touring store?
I mean, going from working with my dad, where I kind of, to an extent, had more free reign.
Right.
Somebody that was a little bit hard mentally.
Right.
Do that. So that was probably some of it.
Yeah. Kind of wanted to be your own boss kind of thing, eh?
Yeah. It was hard to work for somebody. And then, just seeing where I could be in the future. I felt like being off on my own, I could do more for myself long term than working for somebody else. So
yeah,
doing that isn't for everybody. Do I wish that cars were just a hobby and not a profession? I don't know. Maybe some, because then I could get these things done. No, but no, I don't regret anything I've done thus far. I mean, I've met a lot of great people through my years with Dad, and even around here, and just continue to do so, man. I really think it's all about the people, and that's me going.
Yeah, for sure. So I know a lot of guys, when they start their own business, don't have time to work on their own stuff anymore. Do you find that's the case for you? Like you've got nice cars behind you?
Yeah. So when I originally went off on my own, I figured, oh man, this is going to be great. I've got all kinds of time. What do I do with myself? Well, I figured out that I need to start having an income. So I had to really dive into getting the website going, and hop on Facebook, get all these groups, and kind of reestablish myself as who I am, because I am fairly well known in the industry, just not as much as I could be. So I really think that it was important for me to get out there as an individual instead of just as a business name, and really be out there with the people. And that's really what's helped me a lot, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, as far as working on my own stuff, man, I mean, I wish I had a lot of time to put on my Trans Am to kind of get that thing revamped and stuff, but also finish the Miata to where it needs to be. So
yeah, tell us a little more about that Miata. You touched on the Trans Am a little bit, but give us some details on the Miata.
My mom bought that Miata in Illinois back in 2005, 2006 for about $1,200, just like we did the Trans Am. And
wow.
The thing, man, I mean, I'm a small guy, and she was small too, and I just fit in it so well, and it was just so much fun to drive. So I drove it a bit through high school, and then took it to college with me, where I tore it apart. And if you've done any math along the way here, you'll realize that it's a pretty long-term project for me.
Right.
It's a sore subject, man. I don't always like talking about it, but
right.
I mean, life comes along, right? You got kids now, and the self-employed and all that stuff, so it's harder. But I do have an LS1 that I rebuilt and put in there. It's just got a hot cam in it, and a T56, and then a Ford 8.8 independent rear. So it's a fairly, I don't want to say cookie cutter, LS swap Miata, but at least has a 5.7 LS1, versus some of the. And I'm not putting down any of the junkyard stuff.
Right. Yeah, right on. And we got our the Ozman is back in the chat again. He was on the live stream last night. So I see we've got a few people watching live now who might have missed the introduction. We're chatting with Dale Schwartz, who's the owner of the Pro Touring store. And they sell a lot of crate engines, suspension kits, brake systems, fuel systems, and not just for LS stuff. He's got Coyote stuff and Hemi stuff and Godzilla stuff. So that's who we're chatting with tonight. One of the topics I wanted to talk about was how low buck is kind of relative, like what is expensive to one person is affordable to another person, because some people might wonder why I've got a pro touring vendor on a channel called Low Buck LS. But like I said, I've looked around on your website and I've noticed that you do have, we got Mike Knapp in the chat as well. Welcome. I think we're going to have him on for an interview here at some point in the near future too. But yeah, like I said, I've looked around on your website and I've seen that you do have some stuff that's more budget friendly. And that's actually why I kind of wanted to get you on. Was I saw you post in our Facebook group about these LS3 long block engines. And they actually seem like a pretty good deal to me. So can we talk about some of the reasons that it might actually be a good idea to buy a package like that rather than go to the junkyard and scrounge an engine like I did that one behind me?
Sure, man. I mean, being in the industry, we've seen a lot of stuff, and a lot of nasty stuff. And what I mean by that is I've got an early example of a takeout motor that I brought. It was a good LS1 T56 combo out of WS6, and we were swapping it into a Nissan 240, and it was a good motor. That's what we were told, and that's what he was told. He's like, oh yeah, they ran it, everything's fine. So we started swapping it in, and the first thing we noticed was that there was a chunk of the valve cover missing.
Oh no.
Chunk go. Well, took the valve cover off, and there it is, lodged inside of a valve spring. And rocker arms busted. There's probably internal damage to the valve and whatever. So, what looked like a really good deal at at the time, it was probably a $3,000, $4,000 combo or something. Added a couple grand to it real quick because you're paying a shop labor to do it. Now, if you're an individual and you get an engine swap from a junkyard and you stick it, all that stuff, you got all kinds of time in it, all kinds of money. It doesn't matter if it's $500 or $50,000. Either way, you got time and money into it. And
yeah, for sure.
You go to start it for the first time and rod's knocking or something, or whatever. There's all kinds of things it could be. And I mean, that just makes you sick to your stomach. And there's been a lot of guys that have good luck with junkyard motors. I mean, I've seen plenty on your page for one.
Yeah.
Other groups too, the 5.3 and the 6 liters are just a craze, right now, because they still can be had for relatively cheap. Now, right here, you can kind of see, this is a LS3 long block. Now, Chevrolet Performance pumps these things out. They're available in 3 variants. They're all aluminum. It's a completely new LS3, new block, new pistons, new crank, everything. And they're right about $5,300. And it's a brand new with a warranty. Okay, now I get it. Some guys can't afford, a $5,000 engine. I'm one of them.
Right.
on the Miata's engine or the rebuild that I did. So, with that said, I get it. There's an engine place for everybody. But on this particular one, it's got a 2-year warranty, 50,000 miles. It's well priced. They're again, assembled with all new stuff. You can do whatever you want to this thing. It doesn't come with an intake or coils or injectors or water pump. So you got to put all that stuff on. But a lot of guys have that stuff either laying around. If you've done any type of LS work, you probably have some spare parts that you can stick on there, or get cheaper parts to put on it to make it a complete motor. So you look at a crate motor, brand new crate motor, those are pulling over $8,000 now for the LS3. This thing's a little over $5,000. Well, injectors, intake, throttle body, and coils you can find for a lot less than the $3,000. So, when you're comparing this kind of thing to like a brand new. I'm just trying to think of another example, like a professionally built engine or whatever that's $10,000-$20,000. You can do a lot to this little thing, and it's all brand new. You don't really have to worry about it. So
Yeah, exactly. And that warranty is definitely appealing. Like this one behind me, I have no idea how many miles are on it or what condition the bearings, main bearings or cam bearings, and can almost guarantee the injectors are no good, and I'll either need new injectors or send them out to get refurbished. So yeah, that actually seems like a pretty good deal. So yeah, you mentioned it's a long block and not a turnkey. Can you just repeat those parts again that you'd need to make it a complete running engine?
yeah, the long block from Chevrolet, at least, most long blocks are not this complete, but this
Okay.
particular long block comes with the front and rear cover, so you don't need to worry about those. It's got new seals in them, so you're not going to have a rear main leak or anything. Right out the valley cover comes with a harmonic balancer, which it's a Corvette spacing. So it's, a lot of guys using trucks accessories or whatever because they're cheaper. You have to swap that out. But there's no intake, no coils, no coil brackets or harnesses, no spark plugs, no spark plug wires, intake and rails, injectors, throttle body, all that's off of it. So
Okay.
started doing that specifically because a lot of guys are changing those parts out on a custom build or whatever. These engines actually are a really nice replacement too for truck guys that have a Gen 4 truck like the Denali's and stuff that came with an L92.
Yeah.
Because these don't have any VPT or DOD in them. It's just a stock LS3 cam or the upgraded, hot cam and ASA cam that's available in them as well. But just the base one, like I've got here, is a very, relatively inexpensive, we'll say, option. There's no core charge on it either. I know a lot of people require you to get a core if it's a reman engine or something like that, but these are brand new, so no core required.
Yeah. So you mentioned it doesn't come with an intake. If you were putting one of these in your Miata or whatever, what intake would you go with? Like just the stock LS3 intake or the Holley low ram, or what would you recommend?
It kind of depends on all the modifications, So the factory LS3 intake is a very nice flowing intake. The factory throttle body, in the opening is 90 millimeters, so plenty of airflow there. Even if you put a pretty wild cam in here, it's going to be hard to reach the max of that LS3 intake. So, you could put a fast intake or MSD intake on there too, and up some more. Have a pretty wild cam in it. But if you're just fairly basic, just stick with the stock intake. The Holley ones, and they got the sheet metal intakes. Those they have their place, in my opinion. They look really nice. I like the looks of them, and I've used them on several builds. People complain about how much power they rob down low and stuff like that, but you're really not going to notice the 20 horsepower or whatever, 20 foot-pounds of torque that is different. A lot of guys that are going for the look just want it for the look. They don't really care about that minor loss in horsepower.
Yeah, exactly. But that's kind of, they've always been in my mind, like the sheet metal intakes, especially I view them as like a high RPM intake. And if you're just going for the look, nothing wrong with that. What about EFI systems? Like, would you, again, if it was your own project, would you go with like a stock ECM and harness? Or I know you're a dealer for Holley. Would you go with like a Holley Terminator, or what kind of EFI system would you put on there?
Right. So I've used all kinds of harnesses and computer systems over the years on a lot of different builds. And what I like the GM stuff probably the most. Just because you've got an OBD2 connection. You've got a lot of flexibility there with connecting up like different gauges and different stuff like that. There's a lot of guys that will run different displays from Amazon, or Dakota Digital has an interface if you got Dakota gauges, which they do for Holley as well, but that's fairly new. And then just the fact that you can run code, see what codes are popping up. And yeah, you need HP tuners or whatever. I personally don't like messing with tuning. I know that you probably do because you're kind of getting into the whole thing. And you like the electrical background, and that's great. But I kind of know my limits, and I don't want to get involved with tuning.
Yeah, especially HP tuners is fairly intimidating.
Yeah, and I had done a lot of different minor, we'll call it minor tuning.
Yeah.
When we did packages and stuff like that, we would take a factory computer and load an already good tune from another car into it because it was the same package, to get somebody a good baseline.
Yeah.
So, I had experience with doing that in HP tuners. But if I were to do my own car, I'd probably still stick with the GM. I do have a GM in Miata, but back then that was all that there was, pretty much.
Yeah.
Even today, I'd probably still do the same. Now, I do have a Holly Dominator in another one of my vehicles that's not here, backed by a LS1. And the flexibility of that, I mean, if you want all the expandability that you want, I mean, the Terminator, the HP, the Dominator, whatever, have a lot more capability in that regard, and are better suited for those type of builds. I don't want to call them race car builds, but you kind of know what I mean, versus an OE type build that's fairly basic. So.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that was one of the questions I had. I think you're talking about the death cart that I saw that in your Facebook cover photo there. Tell us a little bit about that thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll drop a picture, or you can just do a Google search of the Schwartz Performance skart. It's SKART. So
okay,
kind of takes Schwartz and go-kart and kind of smushes them together.
Makes sense.
So yeah, that one was basically years and years ago because I wanted to showcase the Schwartz Performance chassis in a way that can be driven, because my dad's company is pretty well known for building chassis for muscle cars. So what better way to show off a chassis than something that runs or drives around? We could bring it to shows and that kind of thing. So it morphed into something much more than that, honestly, which most projects probably do. But basically, we had an intern, engineering intern. His name is Clay, and he was a pretty bright kid. And I told him this idea that I had from years back, and he's like, "Oh, let's do it," And he's 19, 20 at that time, so what's money to him when he's working at a cool shop?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, let's do it. Well, I had to do something and some behind the scenes work to get some stuff done on the chassis side. So basically, it's a Schwartz Performance chassis for a GM A body. It's like the 68 to 72 A body specifically. Took and shortened it a lot. The wheelbase on the 68 to 72 Chevelles is 112 inches, and this one's 83.
Oh, wow.
29 inches or something shorter. So considerably shorter. A Miata is 90 inches, so it gives you another idea.
Wow.
Shorter than a Miata. So
yeah.
Like Samurai or something like that.
Yeah, must be fun to drive, eh?
Oh man, it's a riot. It's so I've got a stock LS1 in it. It's got a Holly, the dual sniper intake that has the twin facing throttle body. I've got drive-by-wire on both of those. So it's powered by a Dominator, which is the only thing that'll control dual drive-by-wire.
Right.
T56 Magnum, Schwartz independent rear suspension that's got a 9-inch, and big old bear brakes, 14-inch 6-piston, all four corners. So it's basically got all of the parts that we sold or that we installed on a lot of our higher end projects, but there's no body on it. It's just a bunch of tubing. So cage and stuff on it. And Clay did pretty much all the fabrication stuff. I helped him a lot with it. And then I did the majority of the mechanical work. And then our electrician at the time did all the electrical and wiring for it. But yeah, that thing's a riot. Hopefully I'll have it down here by the end of the year and be able to, put the Pro Touring Store name on it as well, and kind of fool around. So
nice. Yeah, it looks like a fun project. So we got a question in the chat. I'll put it up on the screen here. So going from a stock truck intake to a Holly Fab intake, is there a power gain? He'd say yes, but he hasn't done that except for watching on Richard Holdner's channel. He figures a loss of horsepower or torque seems unlikely. So yeah, between the stock truck intake and a Holly Fab intake, do you think there's a power gain associated with that?
Again, it kind of depends on the combo. If you're talking a stock 5.3 going to that sheet metal intake, I'd say no. There's probably zero gain anywhere. And I'm sure Holdner's probably verified that.
Right.
But if you got a cam in it, then yeah, you're meeting the limits, of that stuff. Now, any truck intake is going to have a good amount of torque down low. That's kind of what they're known for, being long runners. That's why they're so tall, because they have a lot of volume in the runners. So, and that's what gets you that. The Holley sheet metal ones, especially the shorter runner one, they're designed for higher RPM or good looks, like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So if you had a cam in it and you were swapping from the 5.3 to the Fab intake, you will probably gain some horsepower up top. But it's going to be, over 4,000 RPM. So how often do you really drive there is the main question. Is it worthwhile? Again, for looks, it might be, but just want, all out power and want a dyno number, then sure, you'd probably benefit from the Fab intake.
Yeah, cool. Good answer. Let's go back to talking about that your long block LS3 there for a second. You said it's got a 2-year warranty. What all, like, if someone buys it and swaps the cam and valve springs, does that void the warranty, or what?
Well,
tell us a bit more about the warranty on that.
Let's ask this, Randy. If you buy a new car, a new Camaro off the lot, and you cam swap it, is the warranty void?
I would say yes.
It's the same thing. Now, there are different gray areas here, okay? So, like, if you were to swap the cam out and the valve springs and the push rods and all that stuff and the oil pan and whatever, and, there was a, let's say, trying to think of an example here where there'd be something like, I don't know, the rod starts knocking or something like that. Well, you changed the oil pan, so you could have starved it for fuel via the pickup O-ring, like everybody knows in the LS. Yeah. So you could be at fault for that. Now, if you didn't do any cam change, but you did swap the oil pan and a valve spring breaks or a rocker arm comes loose or something, well, that's completely unrelated.
Yeah.
So you generally have a case there. So they kind of treat it case by case, honestly, Randy. So there's always that gray area with them, but Chevrolet Performance knows that most people are changing the oil pans anyway, to fit into different applications, and that's kind of, I guess, to answer that question about the warranty.
Okay. What about does it matter who installs it? Like, if I buy one and install it in my garage, does it have to be installed by an authorized dealer or shop, or can I do it myself?
That's a really good question. So Chevrolet Performance has independent service centers, or ISCs, around the country. And if you had one of them install it for you, generally, if there's an issue, they will pay labor and parts costs if there's a warranty issue. And then, so there's like a parts and labor warranty in that regard. Now, if you do it in your garage, or you're not an independent service center, authorized by Chevrolet like that, it's just a parts warranty, and it doesn't matter, as far as that goes. Now, where it gets a little bit tricky for you, Randy, is that you're in Canada,
right?
And the warranties are only valid in the U.S.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
They might have, I don't know what exactly they would do, but
Right.
you'd probably want to try to hook up with someone in the U.S. to either get that covered if it was a legitimate issue or something. But
yeah,
I don't want to comment too much on that and get myself in trouble of.
Right.
But well, Dale said so. No,
Yeah.
but as far as that goes, again, the parts and labor will be covered. I believe that there's an additional warranty, like maybe it goes to 3 years or something. I'd have to check the actual thing if you have a dealer install it, not just an independent service center.
Okay.
But who's going to bring their C10 or Camaro or whatever into the dealer for an LS swap? It's just
Nobody I know.
I wouldn't either. So, but
Okay. Speaking of me being in Canada, do you ship those outside of the US? Like, what would be involved with? I know the price you said includes shipping in the US, and it's an extra $50 if they need like a power tailgate deal. But what if I wanted to order one from you? Is that doable?
it's doable. I can sell to you, but I can't really ship. So you'd have to have it shipped to the border,
Okay.
then arrange for it yourself. I believe there's been several people that have done that, over the years, but shipping direct is always pretty costly for us, and it takes a lot of paperwork and stuff. So it's just something that's a little bit cumbersome to work with.
Probably not worth the hassle for you. Eh?
In the years past, like a dad's shop, but it's kind of expensive for you compared to just grabbing it from the border using some other forwarding service.
Yeah, for sure. We got another question in the chat from Mike with MK Motorsports. He's asking if we can recommend an intake for a turbocharged 6-liter. Currently has the Trailblazer SS intake. Do you have any recommendations for him?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much again, it sort of comes down to the combo. If it's just a stock 6-liter with a turbo, with no cam or anything, then probably not worth expense. But if you're trying to go for a max effort type of deal, then really any of the Holley intakes are going to be a good thing. Coming down to the cam, again, camshaft manufacturers will always have a good recommendation of the power band, that you should stay within, and that kind of thing. But, it also comes down to hood clearance. So like if you compare the Holley ultra low ram that fits under pretty much anything compared to like the high ram, I don't know all of the definite differences with power gains between those two. I've seen big power on both of them, both intakes, and they are both recommended for boosted applications. So, I can't really give a definite answer of that without really knowing a little more about the combination. I feel like a single turbo application, you'd probably do pretty well with even the lower rise ones.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's in like a Silverado pickup, but yeah. So let's move on to the crate engine we've been talking about is like a Gen 4 58X, but the two projects I've got are Gen 3 24X. Do you got any engines for us Gen 3 guys? I think I saw like that LS 364 on your website.
Yeah. Chevrolet Performance was very smart and took basically the 6-liter truck block, the iron block, and stuck all new components in it and LS3 heads. So it's all Gen 3 bottom end, except for the rods. The rods are actually Gen 4. But it's got a 24X reluctor, got the knock sensors in the valley and all that stuff, just like that Gen 3 6-liter block is. And so it was kind of designed as a swap more so for like the 99 to like 06 or whatever, the Gen 3 trucks, to swap in something that's more power and not a reman motor,
Okay.
iron block and stuff. So it comes with truck pan on it, or the GM muscle car pan, which is one of the truck pans. And then I can't remember. Oh, it's got an LS6 cam. That's right, LS6 cam in it, and it's rated at 450 horsepower, and it's got flowing LS3 L92 style heads. So you will need to change intake if you're putting it in an older vehicle like that, to the rectangle port. But besides, a really good value. It's similarly priced to these ones here. They're like 5,200, something like that.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's a pretty good deal for what that.
Yeah, perfect.
For those.
So one other thing I was going to ask, going kind of back to the shipping and stuff thing, if someone lived near you and wanted to buy an engine from you and not have it shipped and just come pick it up from you, is that an option?
Yeah, absolutely. Usually we require a deposit just to get the engine here and make sure they're serious, because I don't want to just have an engine laying around that's not for anybody, especially if it's something specialty.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had multiple people pick stuff up from here. So
okay, and not just engines, like parts and suspension components and.
Yeah. If it's worthwhile for that, yeah, no problem. And I've had a few local customers that have bought supercharger kits and cam parts and other miscellaneous things. So yeah.
Do you sell, like, I didn't see on your website, do you sell cams and like engine components and stuff like that, or do you just sell the whole like long block assembly mainly?
I kind of specialize in just the full on crate motors because they're easy. I do sell aftermarket cams as well. I'm set up with Cam Motion, and then I've got some close friends that can get me, BTR stuff and whatnot. So I can get pretty much anything, in that regard. As far as like the internals, like pistons and rotating assemblies, not so much. I don't really deal with that too much. I can help spec something out, but that's usually better suited for an actual engine builder or the manufacturer of those parts.
Yeah, makes sense. So you mentioned superchargers there. That's something I wouldn't mind chatting about. It's, again, not exactly low buck, but it's something I'd be interested in doing in the future. I did see that you have the LSA blowers on your website there. Let's talk about those a little bit. Like, what's needed to do an LSA conversion and bolt an LSA blower onto an engine that didn't come with it?
Well, it's fairly easy if you've got rectangle ports. The Gen 4 is just literally bolt on and pretty much go. Now, I do want to talk about like a Gen 3 application, because I've seen a lot of guys do that, and it is a fairly low buck way to get boost and get a supercharger, because you can find these LSA blowers for there's a few guys on some of the groups that sell these things, and they go through them and at least check them, for bearing noise or whatnot, put a solid isolator in them, which is the coupler between the rotors and the pulley, and all that, and they they'll check them before sending them out. And you can get those things for like $2,000, 2,500, somewhere around there. I mean, that's pretty cheap for a blower. I mean, if you're going something like that, you're going to be spending even more, double at least for a blower. So to put it on a Gen 3 motor, obviously it's a different port configuration. You've got a rectangle port getting put on a cathedral head. So ICT and a few other companies make adapter plates for that out of billet. So that's step one, to be able to bolt it on. Step two would be figure out what pulley spacing you're going with. Now, the LSA pulley, the supercharger pulley, is an 8-rib. And on the factory setup, it's a dedicated belt. Then you've got a separate belt for like the AC and the rest of the accessories, power steering and whatnot. So the factory LSA balancer has 3 sets of ribs. So it's very big. Now, if you go with a truck balancer and you're doing truck spacing, because you got a 5.3 or 6 liter and you're wanting to boost it, you can do a 6-rib conversion on, and basically it's the same spacing as 6 of the ribs on the LSA blower pulley, and it'll hit the 6 ribs on the truck crank pulley, Then you can just run truck accessories for the most part. Again, depending on your application, you may need to modify some things, but there's a few companies that do like aftermarket bracket kits to make that system work. Or you can go and do a full aftermarket setup from a company like LSX Concepts, which is one of my vendors that sells a complete kit. And you get a dedicated supercharger drive, and then the rest of the stuff is on, on a different pulley. So yeah, there's options there. So that's pretty much the basics, I guess, of getting it bolted on.
Okay, so it sounds like there's no LS engine that you couldn't put an LSA on, like as long as you get the right belt spacing and rectangle to cathedral adapters and all that, eh?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you get a little complicated if you're talking like the dry sump engines, but
right.
But yeah, other than those,
yeah. So are some of the engines better suited for a supercharged application? Like if you were putting one in your own project, what engine would you pick to put an LSA blower on?
Well, I guess if you're talking more so the low buck stuff,
right.
I would probably just stick with an LS3 or I like all aluminum. Okay. So
yeah.
I would an LS3. Now, iron blocks are obviously more well known for holding up to more beating. So if you're going for a little more power or something like that, I mean, there's nothing against doing it on a 6-liter. So yeah, I would just personally go the easy way out and pick a rectangle port option and save up my dollars to be able to do it. That would be my
for sure. Simple is better usually. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can make a big headache for yourself and whatnot because somebody out there has done it before or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like you're doing the work. So if you want to make that extra work for yourself, by all means, go for it. I like to take the easy way out.
Okay. And we got another question in the chat. I'm guessing this is for you. Are you at Sacramento Raceway August 27th? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure who they're talking about. I don't know who the they is. So Danny, if you could specify who they is, we can come back to that.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned you're a dealer for Holly, you're a dealer for LSX Concept. What other brands or what other kind of parts and stuff do you carry that would be useful to us low buck DIY junkyard guys?
Sure. So Holly is a big one because obviously Terminator X and X Max is a pretty popular EFI system to go with, and they're relatively cheap. I mean, if you compare them to some of the GM options.
Yeah.
So besides that, I'm just trying to think real quick. I've got Improved Racing is another one. They're pretty well known in doing like oil pan baffles and some different oil control stuff. So they've got like windage trays, oil pan baffles, which are great for drag or road race, autocross applications. And then they've got like oil thermostats and oil coolers and things like that. So they're a really nice USA made company. Trying to think who else here. There's a number of accessory drives, like Wegner Motorsports. I do a lot with them for the billet accessory drives. And again, I guess that's not really considered the low buck deal, but I highly recommend them. Don't do a whole lot with ICT billet yet. Just haven't really got to that point. But let's see. Yeah, I guess for low buck, that's probably the biggest ones.
Mike says Improved, make some nice stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what about transmissions? I see you carry the Tremec manual transmissions. You carry like any automatic transmissions, or what about trannies?
Yeah, Chevrolet Performance has a number of automatic transmissions. They've got the 4L65, the 70, the 75, the 85. The 6L, the 8L, the 10L, when we're talking about the later model stuff. And then I'm also a dealer with Bowler Performance Transmission. So they do a lot of automatics as well.
Okay.
They're pretty much my go-to for any of the higher horsepower stuff. So like if I sell a Hellcat motor or a high output LT4 or something like that, usually try to go with like a 4L80 and have them build it to the moon and support all the horsepower.
Yeah, perfect. So one other thing that I saw on your website, and it's definitely not low buck, but it's definitely interesting. There's that well, in the States, you're going to call it a ZZ32. I'd call it a ZZ632.
Yep.
But looks like a pretty amazing engine, like over 1,000 horsepower on pumped gas and a 2-year warranty. I don't think they're available yet, though. Do you have any information about those?
Oh, I sure do. So the first one, I guess the first one probably went to Hoonigan to get put in that red third gen.
Right.
But they just started shipping, let's see, beginning of August.
Oh, nice.
Week of August, they started shipping them. As of right now, they're only building 2 a week. And
wow.
How many did they say? They've got over 100, I believe, on back order. So do the math. We got 2 a week and over 100. That's 50.
Yeah, that's going to take a while.
This was as of a few weeks ago at this point. But so yeah, they're not building them very quickly. There's still each individual one gets tested, all this stuff. So they got a lot of time into them. I personally know a guy that has one of the early ones. Okay. I don't know what serial number it is, but it's probably like number 2 or 3.
Oh, wow.
And he's having it shipped around the country to have different parts made for it. So
wow.
Big things about this engine is, it's the biggest, baddest, Chevrolet performance engine that's ever been made. A lot of reasons, intake and heads especially, along with the displacement. But make no assumption here. It says it's, good for 93 octane gas and it's a good pump gas motor. It's basically an all-out race motor for the street, man. So it's not for just the basic street car guy that wants to go to the car shows and stuff and show off. I mean, yeah, you can do that with it or whatever, but it's pretty much a race motor.
Yeah, so, cool.
It's got a really tall intake manifold on it, so it doesn't fit under many hoods. But there's going to be a lot of aftermarket coming out for it. I've actually got one on order. So if anybody is looking for one, you can get my allocation. But
yeah.
So yeah, it's a bad motor though, man.
Yeah, it looks pretty amazing. But another thing I noticed on your social media, it looks like you've done some autocross back in the day. So that's one of the things I've been thinking about doing. I've always wanted to get like an old square body, particularly a 73, because that's when I was a kid. My dad had a 1973 Chevy square body that we used to ride around in. Also happens to be the year I was born. But so if someone wanted to take one of those old square bodies and set it up for autocross, what would be involved with that? Like with the stock leaf spring suspension, does that have to all be changed out, or can you get started and be somewhat competitive with the leaf spring suspension?
Well, there's a lot of on this. I'll give you mine. The biggest modification that you can do to any car, doesn't matter if it's a leaf spring or not, is shocks, sway bars, usually a front sway bar in the case of a leaf spring car. Possibly lowering springs, but generally sway bar, shocks, and tires. Those are like the top 3 things to change to make your vehicle handle better. And then beyond that, you've got steering system, because factory 73 truck is going to have a lot of turns lock to lock, and a tight autocross course be your friend.
Right.
But as far as handling goes, man, I mean, you got so many different levels. So you could start out doing, the basic, like I mentioned, just shocks and sway bar, stuff like that, and tires. And then you get up to changing more stuff. And at what point do you go all out and go to like a full-on chassis? Because this is something I do want to get into a little bit, because there's been a lot of guys that I've talked to over the years that, just budget reasons and whatnot, you like to just take it in stages, and that's great. I do the same thing, but on some of these vehicles that have full frames, as opposed to like a unibody car like this thing, there's so many aftermarket options out there that are in the full frame category that you can really benefit from. Now, we're talking, going from a $2,000 build to a $20,000 build. But if you do that over the course of, 5 years or whatever, you will probably get to a point, if you get stuck on autocrossing and you really want the most out of it, you will get to a point where your frame is the limiting factor. And not just from a frame standpoint for rigidity, it's actually because of the geometry. You're using all of the factory geometry, pickup points for your control arms, and whether it be your leaf springs or converting to truck arm style or a 4-link, and so you get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm pretty much maxed out. Now what?
Right.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. What if you went and dove, like, personally, let's say you got you're like, I want to get into this, and I want to build a truck. You went to buy a chassis, whether it's a Schwartz Performance one, or any of the other brands that have them, and you go out there and you absolutely suck, man. You're a terrible autocrosser. Now what? Well, you got to man. That's the other part of the first modification that you need to do is work on yourself and getting better. We call that the driver mind. That's your practice and all that will make you. So you could take a slow car and have just as much skill and practice into your slow car, let's say, or slow truck, and then go to a faster vehicle and you have that same amount of practice autocross, and you know what to do when it's starting to slide sideways and whatnot, and you'll be a heck of a lot better. So number one is really just practice.
Okay. Any other tips for someone who's wanting to get started in it, or is it just a matter of getting out there and practicing and getting some seat time in?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of local things that you may not even know about. There's stuff around here that I have no idea that even existed. There's a Clemson College is in the nearby area, and they have a little club that puts on autocrosses every so often. Car clubs, like up in the Chicagoland area, I know the Windy City Miata Club has an autocross that they put on. They invite anybody. It's not just Miatas. There's I know that there's like Porsche clubs that do track days and whatever. So it doesn't matter. You can just do all kinds of searching and talk to people, that are into that in your area and get involved. And you don't have to start out racing. You can take rides, in the passenger seat and watch people and, kind of get a feel for it before you actually take the dive. Because it is kind of scary taking especially if it's a daily driver do an autocross parking lot, burn up your brakes, burn up your tires, and, possibly slide off into the grass or whatever.
So you don't want to borrow your wife's car to go autocrossing?
Probably not. Although I wasn't my own wife's, but a friend's wife. We took her car once, but.
And Mike MK Motorsports says SCCA is a good place to start with. So
yep. CCAs in most regions. The closest one to me, though, is like 2 hours away. So that's not always the case. There's CCA. But yeah, SCCA, if you're in a fairly populated area, that's it stands for Sports Car Club of America. Is
okay, cool. I'll have to look into that. I know they do autocrossing in a city close to me here, but I'm not sure what organization it's affiliated with, but I definitely want to look into that for like next summer. So what do you carry as a shop for autocross stuff, like as far as like the chassis and brakes and suspension and steering and all that? What kind of stuff can you get for autocross?
Sure. So if some of you are a little unfamiliar with the term pro touring, it's basically it's basically taking muscle cars or older vehicles and modernizing them with bigger brakes, better suspension, better handling, more modern conveniences, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I specialize in. Now, a lot of it goes into different categories. So like if you just want modern conveniences, well, I've got Dakota digital gauges, we've got EFI systems, we've got different wheel and tire packages to kind of make them updated instead of the old torque thrust 2 wheels. But as far as there's a lot of carryover, I guess, getting that. So like I'm a dealer for Bear Brakes. Bear Brakes has, in my opinion, some of the best brakes out there, especially for what we're doing, autocross and road race stuff. They have a lot of different levels. They have some entry level kits that are fairly inexpensive. There's a lot of guys that take like late model Brembo brakes and adapt them to the earlier spindles, and that's fine and dandy too. But there's little support on that. So like you can't call up Brembo and be like, hey, I've got a 2003 Corvette brake on my 70 Impala, and can you help me?
Yeah, you're on your own, eh?
Yeah. So if you're going through a company like Bear Brakes, they've got good guys that will help troubleshoot. There's a lot of guys that use them as well. So like that's a good one. The shock manufacturers like Ride Tech, Viking, QA1. I deal with them a lot. They're all involved in autocross as well. So just depending on budget, goals, and whatnot, we can definitely get you something to get prepped for autocross, or just a modern cruiser that you want to ride and handle a little bit nicer.
Yeah, cool. So let's move into like talking about the business side of things a bit. Like one of my pet peeves is when you're ordering parts for your project, like anyone who's doing like a car project in this day and age knows about the supply chain issues and difficulties getting parts, but I hate it when you go on a website and they look like they've got a part in stock and you click order, and then after you've ordered it and put your credit card number in, you find out they tell you it's back ordered, and sometimes you wait weeks or months. And I think some of these online e-commerce stores are run by like a kid in their basement or something. But and on the flip side of that, I know there's a risk and a cost to carrying a bunch of inventory, but how do you kind of manage the conflict between the cost and risk involved with having a bunch of stuff in a warehouse and still being able to get parts to a customer quickly?
Sure. So I feel like I kind of entered the market at an interesting time, and that what I mean by that is a lot of people like us are used to waiting. To an extent, there's some people that seem to think that they can still get anything next day because of Amazon.
Right.
Blame Amazon for a lot of these troubles as a business. So in the regard of some of the places that look like they have it in stock and they don't. I try, at least on my website, to have as much product on there that I can get pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I've done so far. I don't want to, have people waiting, or at least put it in the description. Some of these larger, well, I say larger, but they might not be larger companies that, have stuff advertised on their site that may not have inventory shown on their website. Like Summit, has pretty good inventory showing on there.
Yeah.
All other really big guys. But as far as the, like a shop like myself, I just try to keep what I can. And I have had people cancel orders because of lead times and things like that. But all in all, if you're really in a rush for it, just make a call or shoot an email to the person, and find out. Especially, here at Pro Touring Store, I'm really receptive of all that stuff. I'm constantly checking things and answering my phone to make sure that I get things handled and whatnot. So I do try to keep some stuff on hand here. I do have several bins full of all kinds of miscellaneous fittings and parts. I've got Dakota Digital gauges in stock. I've got some Holley Terminator kits in stock. I've even occasionally have like SpearTech harnesses, CNR heat exchangers. There's all kinds of stuff that I try to keep on hand, and most of it is like specialty items that you don't think should have a long lead time. Things like suspension kits and really heavy items, I try not to keep on hand because just the shipping cost, man. I mean, people understand that like I don't ship the same amount as Summit.
Right.
While I do offer free shipping on the website, it's only because I'm eating the costs, of the product and my margin.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
it's just kind of a balancing act of all of that, trying to keep inventory on hand and not burn myself on an order because of like we talked about. So
yeah. Well, let's talk about the difference a little more, or some of the advantages of like buying from a small business like yourself versus buying from a big corporation.
Oh yeah, no, this is going to be a good one, Randy. Thanks for asking. So when you buy from a larger corporation like Summit or Jags or whatnot, generally you're either using their search engine to find a part number or whatever, and you found it, or a recommendation from somebody in Lowbuck LS group on Facebook.
Right.
And you're going in and typing that, and you get to your checkout, and sometimes you have a shipping cost, sometimes you don't, and then you got sales tax. Pretty much no matter what, unless you're tax-free state. And then, you order it and it'll take a few days to get there or whatever. Well, what you're doing is, versus ordering from myself is that I don't want to say you're like pumping into corporate America, but kind of along those lines. I got nothing against Summit. I buy through their wholesale program and stuff too. And they're great, but when you call them up, the salesperson on the phone may or may not have a project. They may or may not have any interest in your project, and they may not even have an idea of what you're even talking about or asking for. And I've done that myself, where I call in and describe a certain fitting or something like that. Like, I need this fitting and I can't find it. Do you got anything close to it? And dude doesn't even know, like, that what an AN fitting is or something like that. That's just a general example. But so, I don't claim to know everything. I know a lot of stuff, and I can do some research to figure it out. I know people. If you're just calling a salesman or emailing just a salesman bigger things, they're not necessarily going to know where to aim you, and it's just kind of a dead end. Well, when you're, supporting a smaller business such as Pro Touring Store, I've got kids. I've got a family. I've got, just like you guys, I got bills to pay and all that stuff, and that it helps, us all grow. If you tell me about your product or your project, I'm going to tell you about my project, and we'll bounce ideas off each other and stuff like that. I've been in the industry a while. I've built a lot of stuff. Through my dad's shop and whatnot. I've managed a lot of projects, and we can always figure something out. So in my opinion, one of the biggest benefits is just that one-on-one that you can get with the company or with myself. With regards to, like, let's say the shipping cost. So again, we're all used to Amazon, where you got Prime or whatever, and sometimes it shows up the same freaking day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It blows my mind still that they can do that. But they make a lot of money here, and lose money here.
Right.
It all balances out as a profitable business plan. So when I go to ship, like let's just give it a general example, Randy. Like if I ship a Terminator X Max system, you know, it's like a 14-inch cube. Sorry, I don't know what the metric version is of that. But you know, it's not that big, not that heavy. Weighs maybe 15 pounds or something, and I got to ship it to Utah. It cost me like $30 to do, and you don't think that it costs that much because Summit or whoever, it's either free shipping or it's $10 or whatever. That's what it costs me to do it. I don't have, you know, and I'm just saying me because that's who we're talking with, but this goes for really any small business. Have small or big contracts with FedEx, UPS to get the rates down. Volume. I'm shipping multiple products a day out of here, but that's not enough to have a huge break.
Yeah.
So I absorb a lot of that cost into my margin, of what I make at the end of the day, which kind of sucks, but it's a necessary evil that I just have to deal with, So nothing against that, but what I'm kind of also alluding to is that some manufacturers and vendors have either free shipping or a discounted rate. So that's another reason why I try not to have a lot of heavy inventory here. If it's little fittings and stuff, yeah, it's no big deal. But if it's, a full on Ride Tech street grip suspension system that weighs 100 pounds, well, it's going to cost me $150 or more just to ship it out, and Ride Tech is free shipping from.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned the Terminator X Max kits, and that brought up another question. I know a while back there was like back order issues and stuff with the Terminator kits. What's the status of those these days? Are they readily available or
no?
No.
Readily available. So let me explain something to your viewers. That's another thing that has come up a lot is the Terminator system specifically. So you've got Summit and Jags and whatever. They place an order for 100 Terminator, one part number, let's say, and they've got 80 of them sold. Great. So they've got 20 in stock now. All of a sudden because the Holly shipment just came. Well, they'll go and sell those out right away, and then Holly hasn't fulfilled anything, for them, so they're going to be waiting another month or two till they get more inventory. Meanwhile, people are still ordering from Summit, thinking that hopefully they'll get it sometime. And then a couple months go by and they still don't have it. And then you've got a smaller business such as Pro Touring Store that may have it on the shelf this whole time. And again, you could be supporting a small business by doing that and get your product sooner. So why would?
Yeah, win-win, right?
But no, as far as the supply chain goes on there, Holly has multiple manufacturers of their harnesses, and they're all U.S. based, from what I understand, and they just can't keep up with the demand. So it's because of you. You're ordering too much stuff, but watching, you're getting behind. It's your own fault. But no, in all seriousness, really, I haven't seen many improvements anywhere. Some companies that already had a handle on, growth and whatnot and could pump things out, they're still doing pretty well. I know companies like Dakota Digital, you order a gauge system today, 20 to 24 weeks out.
Wow.
Ages.
That's crazy.
At the beginning of the project? Nobody, pretty much.
Yeah. And the problem with ordering them at the beginning of the project is new technology comes out, and by the time your project is done, there's something newer and better available. And
right, exactly. That's happened multiple times on stuff, and so yeah, that's I haven't seen much getting better. It all comes in waves. It all comes in spurts. A bunch of manufacturing will get done. It'll get shipped out. It'll flood into the market for a little while, and then everybody's dried up again.
Yeah.
That's how it is with these LS engines. This particular long block, as of today, I've got over 20 of them available to me.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot. I've never had that many LS engines available to me. Will that be the case in 2 weeks? No.
Probably not, eh?
And there's different variants, of all these crate engines and whatnot. So it all just comes in spurts. So
Yeah.
station is get on the list with somebody if you aren't in a huge rush, or if literally everybody is out of something, just place an order with someone, and that way it will get allocated eventually.
Okay.
That's my recommendation for the supply chain issue, I guess.
Okay. And is it the same across brands? Like, is it just as bad for a Coyote guy or a Hemi, like a Dodge guy?
In a different way. So like on the Coyote stuff, I've got engines available all the time,
Okay.
always in stock, pretty much. The control packs, the module kits to run them, not so much. Those kind of come in waves, like I had mentioned. But all in all, man, like, I don't know if it's just the marketing or whatnot, but like I've sold over 10 times more of the GM stuff than the Ford and Mopar combined.
Oh, wow.
It's just a lot more people, I think, are swapping those. I've got Hellcat engines available at any given moment, pretty much. But again, the controllers are kind of hit and miss.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's because the LSs are just so dang popular. That's really a big problem.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into a topic that might be a little controversial. But it's a big topic in like the sloppy mechanics and low buck type stuff. Chinese parts and counterfeit parts and that type of thing. Like, especially like I know on certain things like fuel injectors, I would never buy an Amazon fuel injector or an eBay fuel injector because almost guaranteed it's fake and going to be garbage. But something like an oil pan is a little more like, does it really make a difference to buy a Holley oil pan versus, if you type 302-1 into Amazon or eBay, you're going to see a whole variety of pans that look very similar to a Holley and are quite a bit cheaper. So what's your stance on something like an oil pan? Is it worth the extra cost to go with a name brand?
Sure. So in my opinion, short answer, yes. It's more worth it to go with a actual company name instead of like what I can't even think of one of the eBay or Amazon sellers, but it's always like a weird name. It almost looks like a word, but it's not.
Right. Yeah.
Like hack Zoom or something, like just.
Yeah.
So anyway, there has been a lot of controversy, and there's been so many people out there are kind of misinformed on the whole oil pan situation. Everyone says, "Oh, this Holley or this pan is $150. It's identical to Holley. It's the same thing."
Some guys even say it's made in the same factory or whatever.
Correct. Correct. And my opinion of that, based on my research, because I've actually done the research instead of just speculated on the internet, is that they're not manufactured in the same plant. They're not exact copies. They're very similar. They're strikingly similar, but you have to think, man, if a company, even if it was in China, copied Holley exactly, they'd be all over their ass, trying to get, something out of it. So they're not exact copies. They are, again, very similar. Are their tolerances the same? I don't know. But can you take a grinder and make anything work? Pretty much.
Right.
Do you want to? If you're building, let's say, a higher end build, no, you don't want to have to do that. If you got a problem with fitment, you pick up the phone, you might wait 45 minutes or more, and talk to Holley and be like, hey, this thing don't fit or it's leaking or whatever. What are you going to do if you get, the same deal on Amazon or eBay? Call up the importer that's in California
Right.
part, and you can't get anybody. All they want to do is just, oh, we'll send you another one. Well, what if you have the same problem? What if it's a manufacturing error?
Yeah, exactly.
Problem over and over again. Is it really worth that? In my opinion, no. Now, with that said, there's been a lot of people that have had great success with all of these copy pans and whatnot. And I can't say I'm one of them because I haven't used uh, an offshoot um, China branded whatever oil pan on any of my builds. But I can tell you that I recently tested out one of our generic, I call them generic because they're kind of like a Holley copy, LT pan, because Holley on their 302-20 for all the LT folks, they've been back ordered for pretty much the entire year.
Wow.
I don't know why. I haven't been able to get an answer why. But I have a importer that I do buy from on some occasions, and I have their LT swap pan, very similar to Holley. I did some testing on it myself. Tested a bell housing for fitment, tested it on an LT block that's literally right next to me. Tested, alignment and all that stuff of all the bolts, and everything looks perfect. And I feel totally comfortable selling that, and I have sold a lot of them. So if you're in the market for an LT pan, I got them on the shelf.
Okay.
I do have Holley pans on the shelf as well. But there are some products that are not so good on that regard. I've seen some China, like the 8-stack injection, the stack injection type things on eBay for like $1,000. I know Speedmaster is one of the cheaper companies out there that stuff, like cylinder heads and things. I don't feel like messing with that stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe other people have had good luck with them, but I'm not going to try.
Yeah. It seems like it's a coin toss. Like the variation in quality seems like you might order one, it'll work perfect. Next time you order one, who knows, eh? So is it worth trying to save 50 or $100? Probably not.
Right. And your point on fuel injectors, I think you probably saw the same post that there was a guy that was asking if these are legit. There's a place on eBay, clearly from China probably, that was selling AC Delco OEM GM injectors for $69.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that I can't believe that that they can even get away with doing that.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
what's GM going to do? They got bigger things to worry about than a $70 China knockoff. So use that stuff at your own risk. I always personally like going with OEM. You can, some local tuning shops or fuel injector companies will clean your factory injectors for you. Send them in and flow test them.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, just because it says AC Delco on the box doesn't mean they're legit AC Delco. Like sometimes you have to use a little bit of common sense. And, if you're buying a complete set of injectors for $60, they're probably not genuine injectors. And
right. Yeah. You expect to spend at least $250 or more.
Yeah.
Something good.
And same with, there was another post in the group there about LS7 lifters. There seems to be a big rash of counterfeit lifters out there that are just garbage. And is it really worth, like if a lifter fails, you risk piling up your whole engine. Is it worth trying to save 50 or $100 to risk your whole engine? I don't think so.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work to pull your heads, man, especially if it's in a car. I mean, sometimes motor out to get the heads off. So
yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
Going back to oil pans a little bit, can we talk about the differences between like the 302-1 and -2 and -3 and what applications are best for each one?
Sure. I'm not extremely up on all of the applications that these fit, but I'll at least give you an indication of the ones that I do know.
Okay.
The 302-1 was the very first oil pan that Holley came out with for the LS crowd, and it basically, if it's the oil pan and you got the rear part is the sump.
Mm-hmm.
The sump on the 302-1 is the shortest front to back.
Okay.
So if you've got a cross member that's really far back or your engine's really far forward, that's probably the one that you need to go with. Now it's pretty thick up front. So if your engine is close to a cross member or your rack and pinion or something like that, you need to go with something more low profile, which I'll talk about next. But on the contrary, that deeper pan allows for a larger stroke. So it would work perfect on 4-inch stroke engine such as an LS7 converted to wet sump, or a custom build, that's a stroker motor. So the 302-2 was the low profile version. So it's kind of modeled off of the F-body pan, the LS1 F-body pan. It does have a little bit shorter sump front to back for added clearance there. And then they just kind of changed the shape at the front end for added clearance. So that one fits most applications that I've run into. The 302-1, the only one that I've really used that on is like the Tri-5 Chevys, the 55 layers. Their cross member is pretty far back. But the 302-2 fits like the Chevelle, fits the Gen 2 Camaro, fits the Gen 1 Camaro, fits the Gen 3 F-body as well. Fits several trucks and whatnot. So that's pretty much the most popular one in my opinion. The 302-3 has two different changes. It's based off of Dash 2. Has some ports up in the front area that are like I believe it's a 1/2-inch pipe thread.
Right.
And they're for a turbo oil drain back. If you have a single or twin turbo application that needs the oil drain back in the pan, it's a good application. Now I do know that does not work on the G-body because the G-body frame is in the way, or the motor mounts or something's in the way of those ports. It's kind of useless. But the other thing that you get out of the Dash 3 pan is it gets you more stroke capability. You can get a 4-inch stroke with the Dash over the Dash 2. So I try to stock, kind of a mix of all of them. But I'll tell you what, I mentioned earlier that the LT pan is a supply chain issue. I've also had some issues on the LS pans. I've had a few on order for several months that haven't come yet. So. Okay.
Seems to be an ongoing theme, hey?
Yeah. Oh, I do want to mention that there's also a 302-5 that Holly just released recently, and it's actually pretty decent for the low buck guys because it is cheaper than all of the other pans.
Oh, nice.
It's the identical pan to the 302-, so you got the longer stroke capability, but it does not have the oil ports tapped.
Okay.
Difference. It does not have those tapped to lower the cost, machining process to do that. So they're pretty nicely priced. They're like $50 less than the other pans.
Oh, cool. I didn't know those existed. So
one of those.
Okay, right on. Let's talk about Facebook scams. I know as the administrator of a big Facebook group, like there's, lots of guys every day that come in that I have to ban or decline their membership because if I let them in, they're gonna make a bunch of posts about classic car parts website or whatever. And I saw on your social media a while back you had some pretty good tips for dealing with scams on Facebook. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yes. So what I'm gonna go over first is I'm gonna help the buyers. Okay, so if you're looking to buy something from a vendor on Facebook, and there's a lot of individuals on there, and they may not be posting to Marketplace. A lot of them actually don't post to Marketplace, I've noticed. Majority of them are in like these Facebook groups. So like the Holly EFI Classifieds is a huge one that has in there. Some of the LS swap groups definitely have same type of scammers. So what they'll go in and do is they're all computer generated. A lot of them are computer generated, the ones that comment on stuff. So like in the case of your group, let's say somebody makes a post, hey, looking for a set of injectors for my LS3. And there'll be the first comment will be from a person that looks legitimate. and it'll say, hey, hit up my boys at, Classic Car Parts USA.
Right.
The thing I notice about that is that the whole company name is in lowercase. Who creates a page that's all lowercase letters? Like, that's just unprofessional, and don't click on it. So if you do click on it, you go to a page, they got 1,500 followers. Okay, well, that's pretty decent for, this place. So they could be legit. Okay. Start going through their pictures, and they're selling, tailgates for Ford F-250s. They're selling seats for BMWs. They're all over the map for products. Okay, well, maybe there's just a junkyard, and you message them, and they come back with, oh yeah, I've got that. It's this much. Send this to Venmo or whatever. Well, okay, right there you kind of realize that it's a scam. But before you even get to that point, the number one tip that I can give you is any page that you go to, not an individual profile, but a page.
Mm-hmm.
Over on the left there, it's got a little section in there, either in the about or just on the main page, that says page transparency. And that's doing exactly what you want, is checking the legitimacy. And when it says, what it says in there is the date that page was created. Well, okay, if it was created last week and it's got 1,500 followers,
yeah, that don't add up.
Yeah, don't add up. Go away. Don't even try. If you click on there, it'll also tell you where the people that manage the page are from, what country they're in.
Okay.
I've seen so many of them that say like Cambodia and Africa and different areas that are not in the USA or Canada or whatever. And okay, that's completely, they're not going to sell you anything. And all these pictures are probably fake.
Yeah.
So there's been a really big influx too of guys that either create fake profiles and steal somebody else's pictures, and they're good. They keep up on posting things and sharing things to their profile, so they look legitimate. But generally, their friends page is either hidden, so it doesn't look like they have any friends, or they literally only have like 5 friends.
Right.
Their pictures will look legitimate. It'll be a common white guy, or something car related, a guy standing in front of a car or whatever. And a lot of these are really hard to catch. Like, from my standpoint, I'm a legit seller, okay? And so I look at these guys and I'm like, and I go through their stuff, even if it's like a potential competitor, and I'll point out that it's a scam, to the person that's trying to buy that from that person. So anyway, some things that you can do are check to see how far back everything goes. So like, look at their profile pictures. Is the most recent, or is the furthest back one from 2 months ago? Probably not legitimate.
Yeah.
Did they have a really large window of time that there was no posts? Well, then they probably took over somebody else's account that, is inactive, or they found their way in with their password or something like that, and they've taken over their account. So that's happened a lot too. The biggest thing is that you can do is make a post and check the person's legitimacy, or ask them. Say, hey, is there anybody else that can vouch for you? And if they say no or backtrack or something, then yeah, that's a good indicator that they're probably not legitimate. There was just a guy recently that I've been following, because every time he posts in one of the groups, I call him out as a scammer.
Right.
He would comment back and say, really, dude, prove it, like battling me. And I'm like, dude, I know you're a scammer. I can just tell.
Yeah.
I've seen him, a lot, and I just, it's a gut feeling at this point.
Yeah.
And it turns out a few days ago, somebody posted, and that same exact guy said, hey, he got me for $350.
Oh man, eh?
Earned money, man. You just let that go out the window to somebody that is, doing whatever with it, and that profile is completely gone off of Facebook, completely deleted. So be really careful there, and just do some due diligence and try to, figure it out. And if, I always recommend to buy through a legitimate seller, especially if it's a new product. Don't buy a new product from someone that, looks scammy or it's just not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, if you ever need support or have an issue with it or whatever, good luck getting a hold of them.
That too. So
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bad world, man. I mean, there's so many of these scammers out there, and another thing that people don't realize is that there's also scammers on my end too. There's scammy buyers
Right.
are trying to scam me and have me send them free stuff.
Right.
I hate to say, but it's happened before, and it's you just got to be careful out there.
Yeah. So do you have much of a problem with that? Like I've heard business owners talk about like chargebacks on credit cards and stuff where somebody will order parts and keep them and then basically cancel the payment or whatever.
I've luckily been grateful not to have to deal with that with my pro touring store. I hope that I never will, but I know that the time will come eventually that there will be a chargeback. There's been multiple people that have called and say, "Hey, do you have this part number in stock?" It'd be like a $15,000 crate engine. Like, yeah, I can. Yeah. All right. Well, how soon? Well, what do you mean how soon? Like, that's usually an indicator that this guy is probably stolen someone's credit card and he's using it to buy something. Before they catch on, he needs to buy this thing and get it real quick.
Right.
Ship it. So I usually catch on to that and I'll be like, oh, it'll probably be a couple weeks. But you have it in stock. Well, be a couple weeks, until I can get it out and the warehouse gets caught up and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
oh, by the way, what are you putting this engine in? Chevelle. Really? You got a Chevelle? I do too. I do. What year do you got? It's a 70s. Really? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm calling you back again, and you better not call me back again.
Yeah. Nobody who owns a Chevelle is going to say it's a 70s Chevelle. They're going to know the exact.
Oh, yeah. You're going to know it like this, man. I mean, so these guys because engines aren't necessarily serialized, so like you can't really track them like some items.
Right.
It's easy to take a sticker off, and get rid of it or give it to your buddy for $3,000 cash or whatever, So there's a lot of those out there too. PayPal is really terrible on the seller side. They're always for the buyer. Credit card companies are always for the buyer. If I were to buy something from, Amazon legitimately, or anybody, let's just say, call up my credit card company, be like, hey, I didn't authorize this. This is a scam. I didn't get anything. Immediately, that same day, they will file a chargeback and I will have the money back in my account. And on a small business side, I don't know about that right away. They'll take some processing. There'll be a letter that comes saying like, hey, there's a chargeback and you're guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
So if it's a $10,000 engine, well, what happened? What was the deal? Well, the billing address and the shipping address doesn't match. Well, then you're so I got to be real careful from selling things to some of that. So again, there's people that question my legitimacy, just like they should from any seller. But I got to question the buyer's legitimacy too, which is just so sad.
Yeah, exactly. Works both ways, eh?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We've been going on for about an hour and a half now, so I think maybe we'll start wrapping things up. But yeah, just wanted to say thanks a lot for coming on here. You've had some great advice and I've learned a lot from you. And also wanted to say thanks for contributing in the Facebook group. I've seen you jump in there lots and give advice and share your expertise. So thanks for doing that. Just to wrap things up, do you want to just let people know where they can find you and how they can get a hold of you if they've got any questions, or want to
Yeah.
buy one of those crate motors from you?
Yeah. So head to our website, protouringstore.com. We've got an Instagram, a Facebook, and a YouTube channel as well. So if you search just Pro Touring Store on either one of those platforms, you'll come up with it. If you go to our website, there's also links at the bottom to those. And you can contact me via phone or email. Those are on the contact page too on the website. Feel free to, shoot us a private message on Instagram or Facebook as well. And I'll do my best to respond quickly. So
cool. Yeah, I didn't know you had a YouTube channel. I'll have to go subscribe to that.
Yep. I actually, the only videos I have up there right now, I'm making more with this LS3 here.
Okay.
A comparison, a very in-depth comparison of the Holly pan compared to a knockoff pan. So, out if you've got some time, if you're interested, and a couple other products on my channel. So
yeah, cool. I'll go check that out. But all right, thanks for coming on. It's been a great chat, and thanks again. We'll wrap this up, and we'll talk to you guys on the next one. Bye for now. Yeah.
Thanks, Randy.
You bet.